that, because let's be real, on the old WNBA front, this is the most relevant the league is going to be for the next couple of weeks.
Caitlin Clark didn't just get injured. She was targeted, and the people who should have protected her, they stayed silent. What looked like a simple groin strain is unraveling into something far more disturbing, a pattern of violence, cover-ups, and betrayal from the very league that depends on her to survive.
Because we can be honest, during a couple of weeks Caitlin Clark is out injured, doesn't matter what happens. Does not matter what happens, no one cares.
Her coach's vague answers, the WNBA's soft punishments, and the media's eerie silence all point to one chilling reality. This wasn't an accident, it was a warning. If you think this story ends with an injury report, think again, because what's happening behind the scenes is much worse. The first sign that something wasn't right came from the most unexpected place: Caitlin Clark's own head coach, Stephanie White. When reporters pressed her for clarity on Clark's groin injury, what they got wasn't a confident update or a professional explanation. Instead, they got a mess of vague responses, awkward pauses, and the kind of corporate deflection that sets off alarms. White admitted she only learned about the injury late last night, even though Clark had already undergone an MRI earlier that same day. In any major sports organization, a head coach is one of the first to be briefed on the health of their star player. But here, the coach seemed just as confused as everyone else. She fumbled through phrases like, "You'll have to ask the training. Staff and I stay in my lane," all while avoiding any real explanation. But fans weren't buying it. How could the face of the league go down with a serious injury and the team's top decision-maker be out of the loop? The disjointed timeline didn't add up. This wasn't just a communication error, it looked like a deliberate choice to withhold information. And if it was a simple case of overuse or a minor strain, why dodge the questions? Why not reassure the public that everything was under control? The press conference felt less like a medical update and more like damage control. It was the kind of staged uncertainty that suggests there's more beneath the surface. Clark's injury wasn't just about missed games. It was about trust between player and coach, between team and fans, between league and media. And the minute White dodged those questions, that trust began to erode. Instead of transparency, we got smoke. Instead of leadership, we got silence. And in that silence, one terrifying possibility began to take shape. What if they're not telling us the full story? Because the truth would spark a fire they can't put out. And if that press conference left people confused, what came next made it unmistakably clear. This wasn't just an isolated injury. It was the result of something far more deliberate. Before the WNBA even announced Caitlin Clark's groin injury, the warning signs were already on full display. But no one wanted to call it what it was. The media framed it as a shooting slump, a temporary dip in performance. But anyone paying close attention saw something much more alarming, a slow, public unraveling of one of the league's brightest stars. Her numbers didn't just dip, they collapsed. Over a brutal stretch of games, she shot just 1 for 23 from beyond the arc. That's not just a bad week, that's a cry for help. And it wasn't just about missed shots. Her movements changed, her footwork looked tight, her release lost its rhythm, her energy was off. The usual spark in her game was missing. You could see it in the way she hesitated, in the way her body didn't respond like it used to. Fans noticed, commentators danced around it, but the people closest to her, the team, the trainers, the coaching staff, they ignored it. Or worse, they covered it up. Then came the turnovers. In the game against Seattle, she had more turnovers than points for the first time in her career. For an elite athlete like Clark, that's not just an off night, it's a red flag waving. In plain sight, she was clearly compensating for something, pushing through pain, trying to keep playing despite a body that was breaking down. Even in interviews, the signs were there. Clark looked tired, sounded congested, even coughed through press conferences. Still, nothing changed. No rest, no real concern, no action, just vague statements and day-to-day updates. But athletes don't just collapse overnight. Injuries like groin strains don't just appear out of nowhere. They build up best when a player is rushed back too soon, forced to compensate for one injury until another takes its place. What fans were witnessing wasn't a shooting slump. it was a breakdown. Her body was screaming for rest, and no one listened. But maybe they did listen, just didn't care. Because what started as subtle signs of overuse was about to be overshadowed by a far more violent pattern, one that couldn't be explained away as fatigue. If Caitlin Clark's performance declined, the sheer volume of physical attacks she endured should have set off sirens. This wasn't hard-nosed basketball or the typical rookie welcome everyone talks about. This was a targeted campaign, and the numbers prove it. 17% of all flagrant fouls in the WNBA this season were committed against one player, Caitlin Clark. That's nearly 1 in 5. In a league with over 100 athletes, that number doesn't just stand out, it screams. And these weren't subtle fouls buried in box scores. Fans saw them, everyone saw them. Kennedy Carter's off-ball body check was nothing short of an assault delivered with no intention of playing the game. Angel Reese, instead of hiding the aggression, celebrated her hard foul like it was a highlight moment. Then came the back-to-back shots against Connecticut. First, a poke in the eye by Hush, and then a brutal shove by Marina Mabrey while Clark was still recovering her vision. Any one of these moments would be concerning. Together, they paint a clear and disturbing picture. This wasn't coincidence. It wasn't physical play getting out of hand. It was intentional, repeated, and most telling of all without real consequences. In a league that claims to be building its brand around Clark's star power, how does this happen? How is she left exposed, unprotected, and alone while opponents take shots at her body game after game? There's no way around it. Clark was being hunted, whether out of resentment, jealousy, or fear of her popularity. A line had been crossed. What started as aggressive defense turned into a coordinated effort to humble, hurt, and sideline the very player, keeping the league afloat. And the worst part? It worked. Clark's groin injury may have been the final straw, but it was preceded by weeks of punishment that no rookie or veteran should ever endure. But even that wasn't the most shocking part. Because while players delivered cheap shots on the court, the league's response off the court was even more gutting. What happened next showed just how far the WNBA would go to stay silent, even if it meant letting their biggest star fall. When a player gets hit like Caitlin Clark has been hit again, and again, you expect swift justice, a suspension, a strong statement, something that says, "We won't tolerate this." But the WNBA's response, a shrug and a fine. It didn't take Marina Mabrey's violent blindside shove. It happened while Clark was still recovering from an eye poke, clearly vulnerable and off balance. The officials upgraded it to a flagrant foul after review, but the punishment stopped at a small fine. No suspension, no real consequence. Just a quiet financial slap on the wrist as if what happened wasn't dangerous, but merely inconvenient. And that's been the pattern. Over and over, Clark is targeted, shoved, knocked down, or blindsided down. The most the league does is issue a fine. These aren't minor fouls. These are deliberate, excessive, and sometimes even violent. But to the league, it's just part of the game. Compare that to the NBA or NFL, where hitting a star player like that, especially repeatedly, comes with swift backlash. Suspensions are common. Fines are substantial. Teams are warned. Why? Because the league understands. One simple truth: you don't let your biggest stars become punching bags. Not because they're above the game, but because they are the game. The WNBA doesn't seem to get that. Or worse, maybe they don't. They've chosen to ignore it. This failure to act sends a chilling message to every player in the league. Caitlin Clark is fair game. Go ahead, hitter. Cheap shotter, you might get a foul, maybe a fine. But you'll stay on the court, and your team won't lose you. That's all that matters. It's open season on the league's most valuable player, and the referees. They're not just blind, they're complicit. By refusing to protect Clark, the WNBA is doing more than failing its star there, failing the entire league. Because when players realize there are no consequences for this kind of targeting, it spreads. And when fans see their favorite player repeatedly hurt without justice, they leave. But if the league won't protect her, fans are starting to ask the obvious question: why should she keep playing at all? Because what's coming next isn't just backlash, it's full-blown revolt. The moment Caitlin Clark's groin injury was announced, something snapped not just in her body, but in the hearts of fans across the country. This wasn't just another injury update. This was the final straw in what they saw as a months-long campaign of abuse, neglect, and betrayal. And now, those fans are done waiting for the league to do the right thing. Social media exploded, not with sympathy, but with outrage. Comment sections filled with fans saying what many had been thinking. For weeks, if she walks away from the WNBA, I wouldn't blame her. I'd applaud her. The sentiment was loud, clear, and growing. Clark shouldn't just sit out. She should leave. This wasn't just emotional venting. It was backed by real consequences. TV ratings took a historic dive. From over 1.8 million viewers down to just 847,000, a stunning 55% drop. Ticket prices for Indiana Fever games dropped by nearly half. That's not coincidence. That's a signal. The league's financial health is tied directly to one rookie, and when she's gone, everything crumbles, and fans know it. They've watched their favorite player get shoved, poked, and blindsided on the court, while the league pretends everything's fine. They've watched the media go silent. They've seen the coach give vague, hollow statements. And now they're asking, why should she stay loyal to a league that clearly won't protect her? Many are now calling for Clark to take her talents overseas, to Europe. Anywhere that will respect her, protect her, and treat her like the generational talent she is. Some even say that letting the WNBA sink is what it deserves for letting things get this bad. What started as fandom is turning into rebellion. This isn't just disappointment, it's fury, it's heartbreak, and it's personal. But what makes this movement so dangerous for the league isn't just the fans' angerites who's staying silent, because while the public fights to defend Clark, the same media that built her up has now gone radio silent, and their silence speaks louder than words. For months, Caitlin Clark was the crown jewel of sports media. Every outlet, every analyst, every sports podcast wanted a piece of the Clark effect. Her games drove record viewership. Her name boosted clicks. Her face was everywhere from highlight reels to magazine covers. But now that she's injured, targeted, and clearly suffering under the weight of an unprotected spotlight, the same media machine has gone silent. And that silence is deafening. Where are the investigative stories? Where are the in-depth breakdowns of the flagrant fouls, the timeline of injuries, the league's failure to act? Where are the voices that once praised her ability to change? The game when she now needs anyone to change it for her. They've vanished. The sports media that feasted on her success is now complicit in her downfall. Instead of raising alarm bells, they've chosen access over accountability. Because telling the truth about how Clark is being treated means challenging the WNBA, risking interviews, and disrupting the sanitized narrative they've built. And they're not willing to do that. Even when the warning signs were obvious, her slumps, her visible exhaustion, her painful on-court moments, most media outlets brushed it off. At best, they suggested she needed rest. At worst, they implied she just wasn't playing hard enough. But none of them dared to say the one thing fans had already figured out. Caitlin Clark was being physically broken down in front of millions, and no one with power was stepping in. Compare this to how sports legends like Tiger Woods or LeBron James have been treated. Those leagues protect their stars not just because of their talent, but because it's smart business. When Tiger was injured, the PGA made sure no one rushed him back. When LeBron takes time off, the NBA treats it like preservation. Clark deserves the same respect, the same coverage, the same defense. But instead, she's been left to stand alone, surrounded by silence. And as painful as that is, it's not the most disturbing part. Because what if the betrayal didn't just come from opponents or media gatekeepers? What if it came from inside her own locker room, from the very people who were supposed to protect her? Caitlin Clark's groin injury was never just about a missed game. It was a crack in the facade, a symptom of something far more dangerous brewing underneath the surface of the WNBA League, standing at the edge of a cliff. Unsure whether to protect its future or destroy it in real time, everything we've witnessed over the past few weeks paints a horrifying portrait. A star player physically broken down in public, a head coach fumbling through vague press conferences, responding to targeted violence with fines and silence, a media landscape that cheered her rise only to disappear the moment she became inconvenient. And most damning of ULA team, and an institution that appear more invested in profits than protection. The numbers don't lie. 17% of all flagrant fouls committed against one player. A 55% drop in TV ratings when she's absent. A 47% crash in ticket prices. This is not sustainable. This is not professional. This is not how a league treats its most valuable asset. And yet, here we are. A generational athlete being run into the ground, while the people responsible for shielding her either look the other way or quietly profit from the wreckage. Clark was supposed to usher in a new era for women's basketball. Instead, she's being sacrificed on the altar of short-term gain. This is more than a scandal. It's a test. A test of whether the WNBA can grow into the league it pretends to, or whether it will crumble under its own cowardice. Fans have made their stance clear. They will not watch in silence. They will not cheer while Clark is punished for being great. They're angry, and they're ready to walk away. So now the ball is in the WNBA's court. They can keep letting envy and violence rule their league, hoping Clark stays quiet, stays injured, and keeps showing up for the cameras. Or they can act like a real professional organization, protect their star, lead with integrity, and show the world they're worthy of the audience. Caitlin Clark brought them, because if they don't, if they keep choosing silence, they won't just lose a player, they'll lose everything she gave them, and this time, no one will be left to save them.